Greetings, seekers of truth. Welcome to the Conscious Tutor, where we unravel the mysteries of the past and awaken the wisdom within. I'm your guide, diving deep into the matrix of knowledge to bring you stories that challenge what we've been told. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community of conscious explorers. Today, we're stepping into a shadowy chapter of history, the Orphan trains, and exploring their rumored ties to the enigmatic Tartaria. Let's dive in. Let's start with the Orphan trains. Between 1854 and 1929, over 200,000 children orphaned, abandoned, or homeless were sent from crowded East Coast cities like New York to rural areas in the Midwest and beyond. This was called the placing out system, spearheaded by Charles Loring Brace and the Children's Aid Society. The idea: give these kids a fresh start with foster families. But the reality wasn't always so rosy. Many children were displayed at train stops, inspected like livestock, and some ended up as cheap farm labor. Others thrived to even became governors, but the process was messy, with little oversight and plenty of heartbreak. Now, why were there so many orphans? Historians point to the 19th century influx of immigrants, urban poverty, and disease. New York City alone had 10,000 to 30,000 homeless kids by 1850, nicknamed street Arabs for their wandering ways. But here's where things get murky and where the Tartaria theory creeps in. Some researchers, like David Ewing Jr., claim many of these kids weren't orphans at all. They argue children were kidnapped from their families, sold, or forcibly taken to repopulate areas after a supposed global catastrophe. This is where Tartaria, a fringe historical theory, enters the stage. So, what's Tartaria? It's a hypothesis that a vast, advanced civilization called Tartaria or Tartary spanned the globe before the 19th century, with grand architecture, free energy, and lost technology. Proponents say this empire was erased from history during a Great Reset, possibly involving a catastrophic mud flood that buried cities. They point to oversized buildings, like old world's fairs or cathedrals, as remnants of Tartarian glory. The orphan trains, in this view, were part of a repopulation effort after this reset, moving kids to empty cities or lands cleared by disaster. Let's explore the connection. Tartaria enthusiasts on platforms like Reddit suggest the orphan trains happened post-mud flood, around the mid-1800s, to fill depopulated areas. They ask, if a mud flood wiped out millions, wouldn't children be the least likely to survive? Yet, we have thousands of orphans being shipped out. Some speculate the trains were used to erase Tartarian culture, placing kids with families who'd raise them with new values, detached from their heritage. Others, like Ewing, claim the sheer number of orphans, millions worldwide. They say doesn't add up unless something unnatural, like mass kidnapping or war, was at play. Now, let's talk proof. Historical records confirm the orphan trains existed, with archives like the National Orphan Train Complex in Kansas documenting 250,000 children relocated. Photos, flyers, and personal stories, like those in Christina Baker Klein's novel Orphan Train, paint a vivid picture. But the Tartaria link, that's where things get shaky. There's no concrete evidence of a mud flood or a Tartarian empire in mainstream history. The term Tartary appears on old maps, but it referred to a vague region in Central Asia, not a global superpower. Claims of kidnapping rely on anecdotes, like Dr. Barnardo being charged with child abduction, but these are outliers, not proof of a grand conspiracy. Skeptics of the Tartaria theory argue the orphan trains were a messy but practical response to urban poverty, not a sinister plot. The grand buildings Tartarians point to. They're often explained by 19th century architectural trends, like Beaux Arts. Built during a time of industrial wealth. Mud floods? More likely localized floods or urban excavation projects. And the idea of a reset. It leans on speculation over hard evidence, like assuming empty city photos from the 1850s mean depopulation, when photography was just slow and streets weren't always bustling. So, where does this leave us? The orphan trains were real, complex, and sometimes troubling. The Tartaria connection, while intriguing, lacks solid proof and thrives in the realm of alternative history. It asks us to question official narratives, which is valuable, but we must weigh evidence carefully. Could there be hidden truths? Maybe. Were the trains part of a grand repopulation scheme? That's a stretch without more data. That's all for today. Conscious seekers. The orphan trains and Tartaria remind us history is layered. And not every story is what it seems. What do you think? Were the trains just a welfare program or something more? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and share it with your truth-seeking friends. Subscribe and hit the bell for more journeys into the matrix of knowledge. I'm your consciousness. Signing off. Stay awake, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.